Morning, everybody. I'm super excited to welcome Terry Hedden, founder and CEO of Marketopia. Terry, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Well, I've heard a lot about your organization. We used to be an agency about a decade ago, and we knew a lot of our top tier customers were, working with you on demand gen. We have moved into software, predominantly providing a platform called Partner Relationship Management, and we're still hearing about you. So I'm glad we connected. I know you will be speaking at our event in Tampa, but I'd love to have you introduce yourself to our audience. Take a minute and your company.
Absolutely. Obviously, my name is Terry Hedden. I'm the CEO of Marketopia. We've been around for, I guess we're on our 11th year now. We've been around for over 10 years, supporting hundreds of technology companies, both on like the vendor side as well as the reseller side. We have offices in London, England, serving EMEA, Pinellas Park, Florida, serving the Americas, and we're about to open one in Mexico City, serving Latin America. And we just help people grow, marketing, lead generation, and sales enablement type training.
That's pretty amazing. So tell us a little bit about the history. How did you get started?
Absolutely. So my partner was a leader at Tech Data in the marketing organization focused on cloud computing, with her biggest customer being Microsoft. I came more from the MSP side. I grew an MSP 50% a year for a dozen years before selling, and decided to retire. And that wasn't very fun. I was a little too young for that. So I was talked into, very nicely though, to help an MSP grow. And that gave birth to basically affordable marketing and lead generation services for the IT channel. So we started more of as a digital agency, and then transitioned into lead generation, and then focused on the MSP at that point. And around year two and a half, we started working more on the vendor side. And then our business grew to where we were about 50-50 between the two. The smaller customers are a little more passion project. The bigger customers, obviously, a little more, investor backed, private equity or well funded. And so we do a little bit of both. And our specialty, honestly, is providing ROI in the form of qualified sales appointments and not just, marketing leads.
That's pretty amazing. What kind of product categories do you cover?
From a service perspective, we focus only on the technology industry. So we work with tech companies as big as like the Apples and the Microsofts of the world. And then we work with dozens, maybe even hundreds of MSPs and VARs that are looking to grow their business. But we are exclusive to the technology stack. Marketopia only serves the tech community. So we know about the value proposition, the market, the competitive landscape for really all of the technologies out there. And we bring that to bear and produce campaigns that produce a better result because we know the market, we know the industry.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's dial back about 10 years ago, right? A lot has changed when it comes to marketing and sales stack. So I'd love to sort of get your perspective. So dial back to 2014 when you started. What did the tech stack look like? What did your team look like? What did you predominantly do at that time when it came to lead gen?
We started back really focused as a digital agency. We weren't tele. So we really focused on HubSpot as a technology with mass personalization of campaigns for each reseller. Syndicated content was the focus, although we built a lot of websites back then. And now our tech stack is completely different. It's a lot more platform based. So we provide a growth platform called the Growth Machine that helps customers do, website hosting, that type of thing, but also email marketing, social media marketing, telemarketing, sales pipeline management. And we include our sales training in there, which really helps the salespeople kind of monetize the leads that they get. And we do that under a single pane of glass these days called the Growth Machine. We have a lead generation team that produces between 500 and 1,000 qualified sales appointments a month for customers in the tech industry. And it's very much a machine at this point. The team's been dialed in for a long time. And so, we're very effective at producing qualified sales appointments. The innovations we're working on now really center around bringing the cost per lead down and leveraging AI, leveraging nearshore talent that doesn't have an accent. We've found bastions of talent that doesn't sound like they're international, but they are, and therefore the price points are roughly half what they are. And we're bringing that to market. In fact, you're the first person outside of the company that's even been told that. We're bringing that to market here at the end of the month, and that's going to be a game changer when you combine, a great digital with very low cost tele in the tech industry. You can produce an amazing price point. We're going to be able to bring a price per lead down nearly 50%. So it's going to be a game changer. We're really excited about it. And, eager to show the world what we can do.
That's pretty amazing. So I still want to go back a little bit and talk about the history, because then we can come here and we'll talk about the future. So talk to us, like, what did pick a category, I don't know, a $5,000 product or a $100,000 product in the two areas that you're marketing in the tech segment 10 years ago. What did you do differently for those two different price points from a lead gen wise? Because the ROI expectations are very different, right?
We were always focused on managed services, recurring revenue type products. So we didn't do a lot of laptop marketing or monitor marketing or anything like that. We focused on managed IT services. We focused on a residual recurring revenue stream kind of marketing, recurring marketing on a monthly basis. We started around $1,000 a month and went up to probably $7,000 a month back then. Now we're significantly more than that, but we're doing a lot more things for it. But we would do, at the start, really focused on social media marketing, email marketing, search engine optimization, website development, on more of a traditional digital marketing focus. And that worked well for us. But what we found very quickly was the customers were struggling to follow up on the leads. They weren't big on nurturing, following up. They'd give up quickly. And we very soon after launching realized that we needed a tele solution, something to complement the customer sales team and produce a more of a business development type person. We launched with an offshore component, leveraging callbox out of the Philippines, and great people, no disrespect to them as a company, but we got more formal legal complaints than we got qualified sales appointments. So we honored all those contracts with onshore resources and launched a call center that now is nearly 100 people.
Wow. So, and what do you think, from your service perspective, that did differently by adding the BDR component that the partners couldn't do themselves?
There's different kinds of sales teams, different levels of sales teams, and resellers, and even technology companies don't always have sales teams that are as big on grinding, nurturing, following up, calling for the 20th time to get the appointment. So what we found that requests for information, even requests for an appointment, would not end up producing a qualified, like a meeting, a physical meeting between the salesperson and the client. And we were getting conversion rates anywhere from 50% on the high end to probably 5% on the low end. So a lot of that money was just wasted. And we realized that by taking over more of the process, we were able to produce a much better result, to the point where the cost per lead was a tiny fraction of what it was when we did less. So we started to do the nurturing on our own. We started to set the appointments on our own, follow up on our own, reschedule if necessary. And we've increased that conversion rate to over 70%. So we can go from a digital marketing, marketing qualified lead to a actual physical held sales appointment, maybe 7 times what it was when we were doing less. And frankly, what we found is the more we do, the more successful our clients are. So our R&D is really around trying to do more to help produce the sale, the actual exchange of revenue between the prospect and our customers.
That's pretty amazing. So let's talk about, a lot of our customers are in mid-market, and their products are also sold in mid-market predominantly. They do sell enterprise. But let's say if someone has a between $20,000 and $50,000 SaaS product, right? Sold in the mid-market, like companies between 100 and 1,000 employees. So walk us through a little bit on the social side, on list generation side, campaign side, follow-up side. How does the process look like? What does your team do? What is the rough development cycle? Like, by the time I sign up with Marketopia, and when can I start expecting appointments? Can you walk us through the mechanics of it?
First of all, we're not a rigid firm. We believe in complementing our client. So the first thing we do is to focus on understanding the goal. Like, what exactly are we trying to achieve? The next thing we go into is what's going well now. Do they have an internal team members that are doing well? Do they have service providers that they're really happy with, that are doing pieces of solution? We know that the solution overall is not working, or they wouldn't be calling us. But oftentimes we find that, especially in the mid-market, that they've got some things are going really well. Maybe they're great on social media marketing. Maybe they need pay-per-click and advertising is where they need help, or maybe their SEO is struggling. Or, a lot of times the tele side, the actual appointment setting is where the struggle is. They're marketing effectively, but those aren't converting to appointments. So what we do is we build a custom solution for each customer, and we come in and do usually a collection of touch points as well as content of some sort, either web pages or blogs or whatever. So we'll have a combination of more of a digital marketing activity, and then a combination of digital activities and tele activities to produce the net result. We want to focus on bringing qualified sales appointments to the sales team of the customer. And if we do that, what we find is that their results go through the roof because basically they're selling, they're closing, not opening. They're not setting appointments, they're closing deals. And really has worked well for us to go to a customer and say, how many appointments do you need to hit your sales goals? Is it 50, 100, 500, 5,000? No matter what the number is, we're able to achieve it. We've worked with 4 different unicorns. We've helped create 4 different unicorns. So we certainly know how to take a firm as big as $1 billion firm and turn it into a $5 billion firm by just simply giving their sales team more qualified bats and let them do what they do.
But let's say if someone is kind of giving you the whole piece,
Mm-hmm.
right? For a mid-market product, let's say sold for 30 to 50K between 100 and 1,000 employee segment. Can you kind of walk us through what component you would recommend? Let's say you're running all of it. What would that look like?
So it's really important for us to produce a positive return on investment. So that first thing that we would ask is if we gave you an appointment with a certain segment of the world, you tell us what that looks like, what the demographics look like. How many leads will you close? In other words, how many of those $20,000, $40,000 SaaS clients will you sell if we give you, say, 100 sales appointments? And we start working back from that and say, okay, what we're going to do is do a collection of touch points. And so there may be a high value direct mail campaign. There may be a digital campaign. Heck, we even have the ability to redirect pay per click, not just retarget online, but we have the ability to put commercials in front of qualified sales prospects that have been to your website. So we're able to do some really advanced integration between digital, and even television marketing. And our goal is to create touch points that warm and nurture the lead until we can actually call and secure a sales appointment, which we then make sure that it occurs. So the steps we do really depend on the target market, the best way to reach them. But very, very commonly, our goal is a combination of email marketing, social media, advertising, and outbound tele as a sequence of events. And then sometimes we'll sprinkle in, a direct mail campaign, win Super Bowl tickets, maybe some sort of high value direct mail campaign to target their hottest, most desirable clients, maybe their top 100. So we really do that. To be honest with you, the constraint that we see out there is capital. That's it. We're able to achieve the end result regardless of what obstacles before us. I mean, we were effective at lead generation for SAP, which is one of the hardest leads, I think, ever in the technology industry, a super expensive ERP system, right? We were able to produce, frankly, I was blown away by the result. So I'm confident we can produce. Now, the key is to live within the constraints of the client. If their budget is $500 per qualified sales appointment, we can do a lot less than if their budget's $5,000 per qualified sales appointment. But the key is to know what the ROI is going to be before you start. Because if your average sales appointment becomes $20,000 in income, you can only spend up to $20,000 to secure that appointment. So we collaborate with the sales team. It's a one team type approach where we're working with them to produce a profitable sales appointment. Knowing that, of course, we're responsible for our part. We get people to the dance, we get people to the table, and then the sales team takes over. But at the end of the day, we're working as one team with one goal, which is to produce a high ROI campaign for our clients and give them what they need to achieve their sales goals so that their dreams become expectations.
That's brilliant. So I want to keep on drilling into that specific area because I can think of several clients. So let's pick a $30,000 product point,
Okay.
right? Let's say they can spend from a marketing closing cost wise about 10K.
Okay.
Right. So I don't know what the lead cost has to be because let's say their conversion is 15 to 18% of, let's say, from MQL to SQL. And then that's what it closes. So walk us through what is the minimum, because we all know marketing requires a critical threshold of investment. I cannot spend $5,000 and expect a velocity that I would get if I spend, $50,000 or even, $200,000, right? Because the cost starts going down when the investment scales. So kind of walk us through that metrics, that $30,000 ASP, annual, recurring revenue. And therefore, if I want to spend up to $10,000 on closing cost, what does the lead cost would be, and what's the critical mass investment do I need to make?
The number of appointments that marketing generates is directly correlated with how challenging it is to get one, right? So that SAP lead I was telling you about versus, say, dark web monitoring. SAP is a much more challenging lead, so you'd spend a lot more. What we find is that that each technology out there is unique, and we create custom packages to go out there and get that. But you might spend, $10,000 a month on digital marketing and produce a lot of activity to warm up and nurture and identify hidden prospects. You might spend, $2,000 to $20,000 a month on pay per click with Google, Facebook. It just depends on the platform where the prospects are. And then Tela, you can get a full-time lead generation person for around $5,000 a month. You could spend up to 15,000, I guess, on that person, depending on what their technical capabilities are and their experience level. And so you can get into a very robust marketing program for $10,000 to $20,000 a month, which in the model you just mentioned, all it has to produce is one sale and it pays for itself. And of course, most campaigns that are spending that much, we're able to get significantly more than that, which is how you get that 5 to 10x ROI that we're searching for.
Okay, that's great. So let's talk about right now. Especially after COVID, a lot of people, switched over from their direct phone line, the mobile, and etc. So I've heard from our customer base, it's very hard to get hold of people, right? So when you think about this whole cycle ending with telesales, what are you seeing as a trend? How do you get your list? Because if everybody has, IVR or some sort of a desk number getting to, what do you do to get hold of the person, especially if only number they have is their mobile?
So that's a great question, and it certainly gets to the challenge of the industry, which is frankly why we exist. It isn't easy. The days of sending out 10,000 emails and getting 250 responses are long gone. The days of sending out 1,000 postcards and getting 25 inbound calls is long gone. The reality right now is it's a lot of discipline and work ethic. And frankly, it's more than a lot of salespeople are willing to do, which is where this new role has come in, this lead generation professional that specializes in converting digital prospects into in-person sales appointments. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that we've got some magical formula. Do we have an amazing script and an amazing team and a motivating environment and a lot of intangible things that have made our team great? Yes, we've done a lot of R&D and discovered some amazing things in 10 years of work. But a lot of what we do is honestly because we're willing to work hard. We're willing to do what it takes. Our team might make, 2,000 calls a month or more to get 10 sales appointments. So you're calling 200 people a day, and you might be trying to get a half of an appointment per day, depending on the lead and the challenge it is to reach the people. But the biggest challenge, of course, is getting the right people on the phone. And there's two ways to handle that, right? A lot of marketing companies rely on robo-dialers to increase that quantity of calls made. And frankly, that's not what we see work in the B2B space in the tech industry. In fact, it's the greatest and quickest way to destroy your reputation. What we've seen work well is preparing for the call before you make it, having a high value conversation so that if you do get a person on the phone, maybe 5 to 10% of the time, you're not just a bumbling idiot with a thick accent struggling to communicate. You're a native speaker and able to communicate the value proposition quickly and succinctly so that you convert a high percentage of those conversations that you get. And it's amazing to me what I see our team get is either that sales appointment they're searching for or a new date to call to get that appointment. In other words, our contract's ending in 9 months, call us in 6, and we'll definitely set up a meeting. They're able to do that far more than maybe their peers, and they're able to achieve a better result. So it's a combination of incredible work ethic, talent, technique, and persistence. And the combination of those things is what produces a consistent result.
So do you use the customer CRM platform or do you use yours? Like, how do you sort of integrate from a flow wise from your side to the customer side?
We are open-minded to using our customers' platform. However, what most of the time we do is integrate our platform with theirs so that they can see what we do. The Growth Machine is an incredible platform for a lead generation professional because they're able to see in a single pane of glass all of the touch points of that customer. So when you can see the digital marketing, you can see the web traffic, you can actually get their contact information through the platform and then call it. You're able to have a very high value conversation because they're able to see the picture of the digital relationship with the client while they're on the phone with them. So it creates a very different conversation when you know what web pages they've been to, when you know their demographic information. We're able to track to the individual a lot of the time now. So in the olden days, you could only do reverse DNS lookup to find the company information that they're calling from. And that was a big deal in COVID because, as you said, a lot of people went to work from home and all of a sudden those IP addresses didn't matter as much. We've got technology that identifies the person that went to your website. So we're able to convert that into a digital appointment, a digital input or a marketing qualified lead, and then convert that into a sales appointment with an outbound call. The outbound tele-side with an in-country or at least native speaker or close to it, very, very close to it, is the missing link. And what we see a lot of digital agencies is failing to produce the result that their clients are looking for, which is why the combination of the digital and tele is where the magic is. And we're able to produce a much better result, higher ROI, and a more consistent result. We're able to we have vendors out there that are getting 100, 200 qualified sales appointments a month. And frankly, for most of them, that's 10x, 20x, 30x what they got prior to us. So whatever we're doing is working. But the secret, honestly, is that it's a combination of a lot of things, including just good old fashioned hard work.
That's amazing. So let's talk about, in our customer base in mid-market, I'm specifically talking about, we would see about 70%, maybe 60% in Salesforce and 40% in HubSpot. So if they had those systems in place for their demand generation or lead generation activities, can you use one of their system, or is your system built upon one of those CRMs? Like,
No.
you connect?
First, we can use their system. If they've got a tele-platform integrated and they want us to work on their platform, we're happy to do that. And we do that with the clients. We know Salesforce and we know HubSpot. We are a partner of those firms. However, most people find that a purpose-built platform on our side is more effective, and it eliminates some risk for the vendor, honestly, not having the tele side in theirs. But we're happy to do either way. We produce results either way. But our platform integrates seamlessly with HubSpot and Salesforce, so we're able to do that. The other thing I'll say is that sometimes people rent lists, and there's not an ownership thing. For instance, Marketopia is one of the best MSP of our databases in the world, if not the best. And we don't sell that; we rent it. So we keep a glass wall between our environment and the customer's environment. We show them the results and the reporting, and we give them the contact information for the appointments we secure, but we don't give them our database. It's 120,000 MSPs and VARs worldwide. It's a very impressive golden goose, if you will. So sometimes you have no integration on purpose. And then sometimes, of course, you do a little bit of both. You say, okay, well, how's your database? I have 5,000. Okay, great. We'll go ahead and call into those. And then we run our database for 120,000, maybe 50,000 meet your criteria. And all of a sudden the customer goes from fishing in a pond of 5,000 to fishing in a pond of 55,000, which of course has a material impact on results. So the list is very important. The quality list is very important. We certainly invest a lot of time in pointing the gun in the right direction, because a lot of agencies kind of underinvest in the front end of a campaign, and therefore the gun is ending up aiming in the wrong direction. And the result is that there's not it's not the same ROI. If you're at least fishing in the right pond with the right prospects, with the right tools, with the right message, with the right cadence and tenacity, well, you're going to get the right result.
So from a list perspective, is it predominantly US, or where is the concentration of your own list is?
It's global. We have a lot in New Zealand, Australia, EMEA. But the majority of MSPs in the world are certainly in North America, no question about that. So we are North American heavy, but honestly, and I'm not pretending to tell you that we have them all in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm sure we have a good number, but the reality is we can always get better, and we do. And that's one of the advantages of working with an agency that's working with a lot of different companies is we make hundreds of thousands of calls a month into our databases, so they get cleaner and better each month. So all of a sudden now we get to the point where we have this really good database with quality content, and we rent that to the customer for a fraction of the cost of building it themselves.
That's brilliant. So talk to us a little bit about EMEA, because, and also, other countries where there's GDPR and all these other limitations are. How do you deal with that? How do you overcome that? How do you work around that?
GDPR and regulations in general is one of the Achilles of the industry. We maintain strict adherence to the law. We don't lie, cheat, or steal to take advantage of people. We don't do anything that would intentionally get our customers into trouble. So we comply with the law. There are vendors that offer GDPR compliant data. We also do it the right way, depending on the local regulation. Sometimes it's better for us to buy, and sometimes it's better for the customer to buy. And we do our best to help them maintain compliance. Dirty databases are extremely expensive. And so what we do is again, invest in that front end to say, okay, how do we get great data that fits our target prospect profile and get enough of it to make a difference? And then the process of using that data, let's get more of it and build that database and leave the client better off at the end of the engagement than when they came in.
So in Europe, for example, do you tend to do more digital versus tele outbound, or does the mix change based on the laws, or how does it work out?
In Europe, honestly, tele is more universally acceptable than digital, especially in email campaigns and that type of thing. So it depends on the data we're able to secure and the best way to contact that data. But Marketopia doesn't specialize in lasers. Like we are more of like a bazooka. Like we go after what we can, where we can, how we can, with the goal of nurturing and warming and educating and inspiring the clients to engage with the salesperson through an appointment that we generate or one that they request on their own. So it's not a pick one. It's what options do we exist and how do we get them all employed? But Tela is by far the greatest generator of qualified sales appointments in the technology industry in the mid market. There's no comparison, especially for a reasonable price point. Direct mail works. If I invite every one of the prospects to the Super Bowl, I'm going to get a lot of meetings, but the price point obviously goes up. But if you have a great outbound tele component that's following up on a great outbound digital marketing component, the results can be very, very consequential.
That's quite amazing. So now, Terry, let's talk a little bit about the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were chatting a few minutes ago about AI. There's an enormous amount of content that's being created by people. So search is all baffled. They're building algos to separate AI content versus original content. That's number one. Social is also same thing. If you look at LinkedIn, a year ago you could write a post and you could get a few thousand views. Now it's in hundreds, right? So they're all pushing towards protecting their revenue, which is an ad-based model,
Yep.
right? Because content, they don't want people to kind of drift away. So where do you see on the front end the digital piece of it, not the tele, and we'll come to that. What if you have to kind of look at your crystal ball over the next 1, 2, 3 years? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, follow the money in general. I agree with what you just said. The LinkedIn is going to make sure that you have to pay them for that traffic. In tech, which is where we live, getting qualified people to see your content is very difficult organically. You can get a lot of eyeballs on something by creating a catchy, content piece, but it's the percentage of people that fit your ideal prospect profile is pretty small. So we actually embrace the digital marketing pay-per-click sort of model and say, okay, across all the social platforms, including, I don't know, Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, or really where are our prospects' eyeballs? How do we get to them and focus on them and then call them? That's where we focus. Our goal is not to create a catchy jingle that goes viral and whatever, Cindy Lauper likes it. Next thing you know, 10,000 people have watched the video. That's not our goal. And there are people, influencers out there that are very powerful, but in our niche, influencers are a lot less influential because their audience doesn't send to meet our prospect profile, right? So we tend to be a little more deliberate about finding that person. How do I get their name and number? How do I get my message in front of them in a consistent, repeated, yet respectful way so that they engage with me in the sales team? So that's what we see. AI is the biggest blessing in the history of our industry. It is a existential threat in one sense, but for those that embrace it, I see it as more of like a Iron Man costume. You take a very normal person like you or I, and all of a sudden you create this exoskeleton that turns us into a superhero. That's what I see AI as. There are customers that are trying to turn it over to AI to reduce their costs, and they are failing 100% of the time, or darn near that. If the goal is execution of work, they're very successful because AI it's a machine at the content provision side. But if it comes to getting qualified sales appointments, frankly, we blow them away. And the reason is because we've given AI point solutions to our team to take the human ability and make it supernatural and produce a better result because of it. AI, I will admit, is one of those things where if you have a beer and you start daydreaming with someone very intelligent like yourself, you can start thinking of AI as being something that changes the world in such a way that it's hard to imagine any of us having a job, especially knowledge workers, right? People who work with their minds instead of their backs. And that is a very real thing. But from my perspective, the true potential, I mean, AI has been around for a long time, right? Boolean algorithms, I've been working in AI for, 30 years. It's not like, all of a sudden ChatGPT, is it different now with generative AI? Absolutely. Is it going to continue to evolve and grow? Yes, but nothing's going to replace someone who knows the business, someone who knows the product and the market, and someone who knows the customers and what's going to resonate with them. And that there's still a place for people like you and I to empower and embrace AI to make our existing amazing team even more amazing and to produce an even more amazing result. I think the day that we all just pack up and go home because we've been replaced by ChatGPT will never happen. I think it's like a lot of technologies that the hype and the fear is a lot worse than what's actually going to happen. And we're starting to see that, right? Some of the initial surge in capabilities of ChatGPT that were like, holy cow, look how fast it makes a 500-word blog. It is not much better now than it was then, right? And a lot of it goes down to what you were saying. There's a lot of the content it's learning from is its own content. So it's kind of getting dumber and dumber and dumber in some ways. But I see technology continuing to evolve, and those that embrace it are going to be a lot more successful than those who don't. And we intend to not only make sure that our team is embracing AI to the point where they're supernatural, but also our customers doing the same thing, bringing it in where it's appropriate and it can drive a better result, and shying away from it when it's just a distraction. At the end of the day, results matter, success matters, and we want our clients to win.
Brilliant. So I want to go back to, because I want to end with some maybe specific advice for our customers, mid-market customers that I was talking about. I want to go back to the same price point, $30,000. Let's say they have, 3-month sales cycle, between 2 to 3 months. And it's a reasonably understood product. It's not a brand new category like DLP and things like that happen, right? So for that product, if the client had $10,000 budget and he could only advise them to do one thing, whether it's digital advertising, whether it's search advertising, whether it's telesales, whether it's email, just pick one, because 10,000 is not enough, right? So per month. So where would you recommend them to invest?
$10,000 price point is where a lot of small businesses start when they're trying to do something in marketing. And they'll come to us and say, what can I get for 5,000, 10,000, 15,000? And I would honestly tell them, basically you have two choices. One is to do something that's not going to produce a great result, but it's better than nothing. And the second is to take that money and save it and go back and get more money where you can afford to do it right the first time. And each approach is logical. I'm not saying one versus the other, but manage expectations is really important when it comes to marketing. And I don't like to see people waste money by doing things that have a mismatch between their expectation and what we expect the work to achieve. So we would just be honest with them and say, okay, for that kind of budget, you may have a 10 email sequence, email drip campaign to your existing database. Maybe we can create some social posts for you to get out there, maybe some blogs. But keep your expectation managed. There's no conversion to appointment setting in there, right? You're not going to get 50 sales appointments or 100 sales appointments for 10,000. Now you start talking about 10,000 a month, and the conversation changes. And so what I like to see people to do is to be real with themselves about what they can expect, manage expectation for those giving them the money so that they remain secure. Work with partners who aren't going to promise the world for nothing, but to give them realistic expectations that they can resist. But in my world, it's about ROI. And I like to see people embrace campaigns that are maybe a little bit more expensive, but produce the desired result. In other words, focus on ROI and not expense.
So let's talk about $10,000 a month. If they want to take a 6 months horizon and say, hey, Terry, I want to work with you. I got a $10,000 budget for 6 months. What would be your tactic recommendation in that case?
And this is a B2B product, I'm assuming, in the tech space?
B2B product, $30,000 ARR,
Okay.
3-month sales cycle, and
Yeah.
relatively well understood.
Right. I think the first thing I would look into is their list. How many of their ideal prospect profiles are in the list? If it's not great, I would spend the first month or two buying that data. Once I have the target market, the email, the phone number, I would embark on a multi-touch campaign, specifically email marketing, social media posts and advertising, and outbound tele. One dedicated full-time representative, maybe two. You could get squeezed into that $10,000 budget, at least one. And all of a sudden you have a multi-touch campaign that should produce a lot of sales appointments. And then I'd probably reserve a few dollars in there to help them with consulting and give them advice. If because the key for us is to have a continuous learning so that the next campaign is more successful than this one. So I'd probably sprinkle in a bit there. So email, social, outbound tele, and a little bit of strategy consulting.
That's brilliant. Well, Terry, I had a whole different perception about outbound. I thought it was going away, but just listening to you looks like it's not only just here, it's evolving in a very different way. And it's refreshing to talk to someone who is in the middle of it and driving the change. I look forward to talking to you, having you on our panel in Tampa. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to helping make your conference here very successful. And hopefully we'll leave everyone that attends better than when they arrived.
Thank you.
All right.